the Manson family, a very well-known cult run by the infamous Charles Manson. Active from the 1960s to as early as 2017, this cult murdered at least 11 people, all in the name of revenge and fun. Why did they do it? What led them to this reign of terror? Welcome to our Lunchbox of Murder. My name is Mason and I am joined by my close friend Oliver.
Together we sit down for lunch and go over the darkest cases in the U.S., both solved and unsolved.
Will the victims get the justice they deserve, or will this remain a Lunchbox mystery? Warning, viewer discretion is advised, as this case covers dark and tragic events. Listen at your own risk. So, who is in the Manson family? Well, it's a big cult, and there are only a few notable names that you need to know. They are Charles Manson, Charles Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Leslie Van Houten, Steve Grogan, Mary Bruner, Linda Kasabian, Bobby Buscelli, and Patricia Krenwinkel. I will be referring to them by their first names, so you don't have to remember their last names. Okay, so now that we have the important names out of the way, let's get into the childhood of Charles Manson. He was born on November 12th, 1934 in Cincinnati, Ohio. Charles Manson Maddox's mother was only 16 years old. His mother, Kathleen Maddox, it's been a long day. Kathleen Maddox allegedly was in a short-lived relationship with Colonel Walker Henderson Scott Sr. It seems like he left after he found out she was pregnant. Kathleen was arrested for armed robbery, so Charles was sent to live with his aunt and uncle in West Virginia. He was in and out of juvie or prison, depending on the crime, for a while. He was arrested for burglary, auto theft, armed robbery, and petty larceny.
Which is?
Good question.
Okay.
I couldn't find a good definition. In 1967, Manson was released from jail and he moved to San Francisco, California. This is where the culting starts. He slowly built a following of the city's bohemian youth culture and eventually was the official leader of a cult called the Family.
Oh. Petty larceny, the theft of personal property having a value less than a legally specified amount.
What he said. This cult was dedicated to studying and acting upon Charles Manson's crazy religious teachings, where he's like talking about the end of the world and the apocalypse. These were primarily like gathered from sci-fi, the occult, and fringe psychology. He would preach about an apocalyptic race war that would destroy the USA and lift the family into primary control of either the USA or the world. He wasn't very specific on their goals. So Manson's control over the cult was really brought to light when the murders started. In total, he and his cult killed 7 people and harmed 4 others, so a total of 11 people. So the victims are Gary Hinman, who is a friend of the family. He was murdered. Sharon Tate, a famous actress who was also pregnant. She was murdered. Roman Polanski, who is Sharon's husband. Shannon's from the last episode. Roman Polanski, who was Sharon's husband. He was a victim of fraud from the family. Abigail Folger, who is daughter of the Folger Coffee founder and was going to inherit all of their money. She was murdered. Mr. Frykowski, can't pronounce his first name, so Mr. Frykowski. He was an author and he was murdered. Jason Sebring, who's a hairstylist, and he was murdered. Lino LaBianca, who's a founder of State Wholesale Grocery, he was murdered. Rosemary LaBianca, co-founder of Boutique Carriage, she was murdered. Bernard Crowe, fraud victim, not much was known, but there was an attempt at his life made.
Oh.
Barbara Hoyt, who's a former family member, attempted murder. Dennis Wilson, Beach Boys member, former friend. I don't exactly know what happened to him, but he was probably a fraud victim. Now let's get into the murders. Tex Watson scammed Bernard Crowe into giving money to Manson. Crowe had threatened the family before, so he was an easy target. Shortly after the money was given to him, Manson shot Crowe. Manson thought that Crowe was part of the Black Panthers, an African-American leftist organization. Crowe survived the murder attempt and got away. Manson feared retaliation from Crowe, so he decided to move the family away from Spawn Ranch, but he needed money first. It's Tuesday.
Woo!
We're wearing different clothes.
Yes, hi.
Yeah. We had technical difficulties.
People.
Well, technical difficulties and people. My phone stopped recording. So, yeah, just a little editor's note there. While he was planning his escape, he was told that Gary Hinman was getting his inheritance soon because one of his relatives died. And this was a large amount of money. Like a lot of money. So Manson decided to send Bobby, Mary, and Susan to find Gary and persuade him to turn over the money. Persuade, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
Now I see why I brought that.
Absolutely. And when he refused, because obviously he did, it's his money, the trio held him hostage and tried to convince him to turn over the money by beating the ever-loving crap out of him.
Because that's definitely the next step of that.
Yeah. They were like, give us your money. He was like, no. Slap. Give us your money. No. Slap. That's just how I'm imagining it in my head. It's not what happened, but that's what I'm imagining. So eventually, when he consistently was refusing, no matter how much he was bleeding, the trio called Manson, and he came over with a sword and cut off Gary Hinman's ear.
Of all the things, a sword. Not a dagger or a knife, a sword?
A sword. Because he's Charles Manson.
But still a sword?
A sword.
Okay.
Yep. When that didn't work, because it didn't
I wonder why.
Yeah, it's surprising. Bobby took the sword and stabbed him twice in the chest. Gary Hinman died. Then
Shocker.
Manson left, washed the blood off his hands and then left because he was like, haha,
I'm not getting caught.
Framing you suckers. So he leaves, goes back to the farm, and Bobby, Mary, and Susan take some of Hinman's blood, write "political piggy" on the wall. I don't know what it's supposed to mean, but they wrote
Probably
that.
something, because coming from a Jew before
You're
anyone gets mad, coming from a Jew, before people get mad, I feel like it might have been if he was Jewish, that would have been why. Okay, well, never mind, there goes that theory.
He might have been, but it didn't say in the case if he was, plus they weren't really big on religion. They were big on Manson's religion, but they weren't big on, other religions. And Gary Hinman was a friend of the cult. So they also drew the Black Panther paw on the wall because they were trying to frame that organization for his murder. It didn't work because Bobby was arrested after he was found asleep in Gary Hinman's car wearing still bloody clothes and with the murder weapon hidden in the trunk.
That's the best hiding spot ever.
I know. No one ever checks the trunk,
No.
right? In a semi-isolated house in the canyons of Beverly Hills, Sharon Tate was hosting a sleepover. Sharon Tate is a famous actress, by the way. I
want to be invited. I want to sleep over.
At this house were Sharon, her friend Abigail, Mr. Frykowski, because I still can't pronounce his first name, and Jay Sebring, who's the hairstylist, and Abigail Folger is the one who's going to inherit all of the Folger money and everything about that. Because remember, her father owns the company. Late that night, Sharon's neighbors claimed to hear gunshots. They didn't call the cops because gunshots are actually pretty normal, you know?
Yeah, that hasn't changed much.
Yeah, still hasn't. But what isn't normal to hear is screams of bloody murder. A security guard who was working for Sharon Tate.
My bad.
A security guard who was working for Sharon Tate heard the gunshots and alerted the LAPD. Not called, alerted. Was like, hey, this is happening. Take your time. The next morning, the housekeeper found the bodies. According to the book, Helter Skelter, True Story of the Manson Murders by Vincent Bugliosi. That's not how you pronounce it at all, but yeah.
Looks right.
This is what happened to Sharon and her friends. Manson directed Tex, Susan, Linda, and Patricia to enter the Tate residence and brutally murder everyone inside. The house used to belong to someone who rejected the... Huh?
So never mind, don't want to be invited to that sleepover.
It was actually pretty fun until they got
murdered. Yeah.
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 The house actually used to belong to someone who rejected Manson when he tried to publish music, and Manson was
a musician?
Apparently, but he was unaware of the homeowner change. He was unaware that the guy moved. So, Stephen Parent, yes, his last name is Parent, saw the 4 cultists trespassing and tried to stop them, but Tex shot him 4 times in the chest. Abigail was stabbed 28 times by Patricia.
Holy.
By Patricia. Frykowski was stabbed 51 times.
Oh, how? That's not... Okay.
And Sharon was stabbed 16 times. Jason was then shot and stabbed 7 times. Sharon's unborn child, unfortunately, did not
This is
survive.
giving Lizzie Borden vibes.
We're going to be covering that case in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, Sharon's unborn child did not survive. On August 10th, 1969, Manson, Leslie, Steve, Susan, Linda, and Patricia, and Tex, broke into the La Bianca residence, tied them up, and covered their heads with pillowcases. Manson told the couple that they wouldn't be hurt, that this was just a robbery, which, I mean, that was originally their goal, you know, just to go in, collect some stuff, and leave. But it didn't work, obviously. They wouldn't be on this list if he just robbed them. The 7 of them collected all the money in the house, stashed it in their car, but before Manson left, he ordered Patricia and Leslie to kill the La Bianca couple with the help of Tex, because Tex was like Manson's right-hand man, pretty much. Like, he was second in command. Tex stabbed Lino, who's the husband, 26 times and carved the word war into his chest once he was dead. Tex was called in by Patricia and Leslie to help in killing Rosemary, who was the wife, because she was being a bit too feisty, according to them, but obviously who wouldn't be? She was fighting for her life.
Fair enough.
Rosemary was stabbed 41 times by Tex, Leslie, and Patricia.
Who names their kid Rosemary in the first place? Who names their kid Rosemary in the first place?
They were Hispanic, so...
Okay, that adds up.
Yeah, it's R-O-S... Yeah, Rosemary is a beautiful name.
It's a pretty name,
yeah, it's like... Their last name... They were a Hispanic couple, and Rosemary is a pretty popular name amongst...
Spain?
Latin Americans. The 3 of them wrote Death to Pigs, Rise, and Helter Skelter, written like HEALTERSICELTER, so written incorrectly, on the walls and doors in the blood
written
of
French
the La
style.
Biancas.
With all the silent letters.
Yeah. The cult members were all arrested at different times throughout the years, but Manson was arrested on July 31st, 1967. Okay, that part was getting a bit too long, so I cut it off
fair.
there. I recorded to episode. And, okay. Recording in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I couldn't come up with a really good discussion question because this is obviously a solved case.
Right.
So the question is, how long do you think Charles Manson was sentenced for when he got his jail sentence?
I would hope life, but considering this was, a bunch of years ago, probably 5-10 years.
He was sentenced to life.
Oh, yay!
For 7 counts of first-degree murder and
Good.
conspiracy to commit murder.
Good.
I couldn't find how many life sentences he got, because I know he got a few, but
How do they do multiple life sentences?
someone can be sentenced to, 100-something years.
So what, do they just leave the body to rot in jail?
No. Once they die, that means you've served your sentence. But for sentencing it over 20 years, close to the 100-year thing, then you're guaranteeing that they will die in jail. And usually people who get over, that many years, several life sentences, they're never getting out. They have no chance of getting
Fair.
out. They're, sentenced to, life without parole, pretty
Right.
much. They can't appeal because there's too much evidence
Right.
against them. So, yeah. Charles Manson died in a hospital in 2017 of cardiac arrest and respiratory failure caused by cancer. So, yeah, that was Charles Manson.
Interesting.
He's a crazy, crazy guy.
And again, as we said last episode, condolences go out to families.
Absolutely. These,
And victims.
all of these
And
cult
friends.
members
Yeah.
are horrendous. They're awful people. And they were all, blindsided by this one guy who they thought was a god.
Yeah.
So they, obviously were not in the right state of mind. But that does not excuse
No.
anything. They
Not at all.
knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Our condolences go out to every single victim and everyone who knew them and their families, everyone. So,
We shall see you guys next week. My tongue.
Allegedly went full Peter on him and just cut off his ear. Unfortunately, there was no Jesus there to
I was thinking he would cut something else
yeah.
when you started that sentence.
Yeah, it is
Slightly.
dark.
Okay. Framed.
It didn't record.
Woohoo!
It didn't record. No. What is happening in the hallway? Anyway.
It's a high school. What do we expect?
Anyway, sorry about that. Take 2. This is great. Recording in 3, 2, 1.